Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
By this time next week, we'll know whether Jeremy Corbyn will remain Labour leader or if his challenger, Owen Smith, has succeeded in ousting him. Whoever wins, they face a big challenge to reunite the party after months of hostilities between Corbyn supporters in the grassroots and the majority of Labour MPs. Tomorrow, 2 television documentaries are scheduled to air on BBC One and Channel 4, which report on the fight for Labour. Speaking to the BBC's deputy political editor, John Pienaar, for Panorama, Len McCluskey, the boss of the Unite union, said opponents of Mr Corbyn need to get back in line if he wins.
Some of the MPs have behaved absolutely despicably and disgracefully, and they've not shown any respect whatsoever to the leader. They should be held to account.
So those vocal dissidents who do not show the sort of respect to the leader that you describe, when it comes to deselection, they would simply be asking for it, you say?
I think they would. I think anybody who kind of behaves in a way that is totally disrespectful and outwit the culture of the Labour Party is basically asking to be held to account.
Unite's Mr McCluskey. Meanwhile, Channel 4's Dispatches programme secretly filmed a meeting of Momentum activists in London. That's the organisation set up to support Mr Corbyn's leadership, where the former chairman of the Brighton Labour Party set out his views on opponents of Mr Corbyn, including the local Labour MP Peter Kyle. We're joined now by the Labour MP for Hove, Peter Kyle. Welcome to the programme. So are you nervous about your future?
No, I'm not. Well, I've seen that clip for the first time just now, and what it made me think about was actually when I was selected as the candidate back in 2013. I made 3 promises to the local Labour Party at that point when I was going through selection. I'd be the hardest working candidate that I'd ever had, that I would bring politics back to the high street and engage with the public in a way that it never had in that constituency before, and I'd beat the Tories. I did all 3 of those things, and since then I've been incredibly hard working and with my team to make sure that politics is driven deeper and wider into the local constituency than it ever has been before. We're more inclusive than any point before and more hard-working. And if I can just make this very brief point.
I want to ask you another question.
Because if they want to beat me and they want to get me out of that seat, they have to work harder than me to do so.
What I want to know from you is there an organised campaign to remove you?
Well, you've just seen the chair of my local party talking in a secret meeting somewhere to have me ousted. So clearly there is a movement locally. I've been a member of the Labour Party. I've only been a member of the Labour Party my whole life. There are people who have fought for other parties for their whole lives who have now joined in the last few weeks, and they're now trying to beat the Labour Party in a different way, and that's by getting rid of me. So I'm going to carry on doing my job. Their job seems to be defeating Labour.
They are trying to get rid of you, aren't they?
What they're trying to do is to get rid of the only Labour seat for a 200-mile stretch of southern coastline. That, for me, is just extraordinary. We are surrounded down there by Tories, and what they're aiming their fire at is the Labour MP that works harder than any other down there, that is trying to solve the problems of rail, of the health service, last week hosting a debate in Parliament about abuse in the family courts against women. You know, all of these issues, which are core social values issues for the Labour Party, and that's what they're aiming their fire at.
But it doesn't seem to make any difference with Mr Sandal, who was the head of the constituency at one stage, I think suspended, on a whole range of policies. He says, you just don't represent the membership anymore.
But he's just wrong on every one of those issues. I've read the clip that he is saying in the press today. He says I didn't support the doctors. I did support the doctors. What I did was I took the line that was given by Heidi Alexander at the time, which was not to go to that particular picket line. I've held round tables with doctors. I've spoken in the chamber about doctors. He said a whole list of different areas where I have not supported the Labour socialist left line, which is every one of them. He is absolutely categorically wrong. On rail renationalisation, I've never spoken against it. What I've said is it can't happen for 10 years. So what I'm doing in the meantime is making sure that I can make sure people's journeys home from work is better than the one they took to work. That's what people expect from a representative like this.
If it comes to a battle, though, who's going to have the support? You or the people who want to get rid of you?
You see, I just don't think about that for a second. My job is to represent the people who elected me. There was a 34% swing to, there's a 34% increase in the Labour vote in Hove and Portslade because of the way my team ran the campaign.
But they know all that.
I want to make sure
they
that
know
I
all
represent
that, and they still want rid of you. Now, Clive Lewis, fellow Labour MP, said on the BBC this morning, it's just democratic selection.
Well, there's nothing democratic about what they're doing, and there's nothing reaching out about what they're doing at the moment. You know, Jeremy is the first person I've ever come across who uses an olive branch as a weapon to beat people with. On the same day that they're holding out an olive branch, they release a list of MPs who they say hate Jeremy. This is not the kind of inclusive leadership that I would expect.
So if you do face a battle to hold on to your seat, you don't expect any help from Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, he's already come down to Brighton and said he wouldn't stand in the way of my deselection. But again, this is, I am just 100% focused on delivering for the people who elected me and that I represent. That's what I'm in politics for. It's the kind of person I am. So if they want to defeat me, they have to work harder than me for the constituency.
But isn't you
just like the Tories would have to do if they wanted to defeat me.
You talk about, you've made that point several times. You talk, though, about you being one of the few Labour seats in a kind of sea of Conservative seats in what Ian MacLeod used to call the Deep South. He did that for a reason. But isn't your own Brighton and Hove Labour Party a bit of a basket case? There's been examples of abusive behaviour, improper ballot. The NEC suspended it in July. It's a mess.
When I go out campaigning, which is every weekend, I've still campaigned all the time. I have a massive team around me. I'm part of an incredible movement down there in Brighton and Hove, and the vast majority of people who are in the Labour Party in Brighton and nationwide, they want to do the right thing, and they care about social values, and they care about delivering it. We just have to win the argument that in order to deliver on those values, we have to be more electable, and that Jeremy is not showing the kind of calibre of leadership that the official opposition needs, that the Labour Party needs, and the country needs to look to if we're going to make that leap from opposition into power.
Okay, Peter Carr, thanks for being with us this morning. And later in the programme, we hope to be joined by James Schneider, Momentum's national organiser. Helen, how typical is Peter Carr's situation? Are a number of Labour MPs now going to face deselection challenges?
I think there are lots of people in the PLP who are worried. I think more of them are women than men, actually. I don't know whether or not that's coincidence or speaks to something broader. But certainly the boundary changes give a golden opportunity for some rethinking. I think Jeremy Corbyn's language he's now talking about is selection. So the idea is if when the boundaries change, if you have 40% of your seat stays the same, you have a claim on it. But anybody who's not in that situation really kind of has to kind of play a game of musical chairs to end up with a seat. And I think the Corbyn team see that as a really good opportunity for reconfiguring the party. The trouble is, I think it's really good that this discussion's coming out into the open, because we've heard for months now from Corbyn's team, no, you're all, this is a terrible smear. And actually it does seem to be something that people like Len McCluskey, people who are very close to the Labour leadership, want to happen.
Well, it does seem now that it's on the agenda. It's been kind of denied, but we had Len McCluskey now saying that he's up for the change, particularly people who have been very rude about Mr. Corbyn. Clive Lewis just calling it democratic selection. Momentum, as we've seen from the film, they're clearly organising to move in on a number of MPs. It's going to happen.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to happen. I mean, I think the phrase Clive Lewis used this morning was natural churn, so which is a fairly a word that suggests upheaval. But it's not just that. You've got the leadership saying, well, once Jeremy's won, he's going to reach out to all these MPs, he's going to speak to all of them, he's going to ask them what he's been doing wrong, and bring everybody back together. The people on the other side see that as an attempt to effectively line up loyalty pledges to get people to say that they'll back him. And meanwhile, we hear this morning in the newspapers that Corbyn and all the people around him had a meeting in a country house a month ago at which they're not just planning to go after MPs, they're also planning to change the leadership of the Labour Party itself in terms of the staffing and the management. The General Secretary is for the high jump, we hear. And the guy they're thinking of lining up for that is one of Mr McCluskey's friends at Unite. He's a declared communist. So that is the world.
If he wants to run the Labour Party, doesn't he
probably have to join
it
it
first?
Yeah. But you can't imagine that they would put too many barriers in his way in doing that. But that appears to be what's going on behind the scenes. And at every single stage where the moderates say, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen, the Corbynists say, oh, no, it isn't. And then you find out that actually behind the scenes something much worse is going on.
But if Mr Corbyn is re-elected comfortably, and perhaps by even more of a majority than he was last time, isn't it only natural that they should then work for the MPs to reflect more the views of the new membership and of the leader?
Well, I mean, one of the interesting aspects of what's been going on is it seems to be the new MPs like Peter Kyle, who we've just had on, who are under so much threat here. And the reason is because they haven't got that hinterland with their party association. They haven't built up that long-term trust. And one of the things that's sort of curious about this party leadership contest is that normally once a leadership contest is over, that is a cue for a period of stability and calm. It brings everything to a head and then everybody settles down and falls into line. I think the opposite is going to happen here. There is absolutely no sign that Jeremy Corbyn's return, as we expect to happen, to the leadership will in some way sort of take the steam out of this whole thing. They do have a plan, I think, at the moment to give the parliamentary party some more power over the selection of the shadow cabinet, and that could be a way of trying to work together better, but I can't see it working.
All right, well, we'll talk more about this later. Leave it for you for the moment. Will Jeremy Corbyn be able to reunite the Labour Party if he's re-elected leader next Saturday? Is Theresa May facing a backbench rebellion over her Brexit strategy? And does Tim Farron have any chance of staging a Lib Dem comeback at his party's autumn conference now underway in Brighton? All questions for the week ahead. Back with me, the panel, Helen Lewis, Isabel Oakeshott, Tim Shipman. Also following on from our interview with Labour MP Peter Kyle, who's complained that some Corbyn supporters are trying to deselect him. We can speak now to the national organiser for Momentum, James Schneider, who joins us from our Westminster studio. James Schneider, there's mounting evidence that one of the purposes of Momentum is to get more Corbyn-friendly Labour MPs elected. Are you still denying that?
There is not mounting evidence that Momentum is campaigning for deselections. We're not campaigning for deselections. The one person who is apparently going to appear in a documentary tomorrow calling for Peter Kyle to be deselected isn't a member of Momentum.
So you would urge all Momentum supporters in Brighton and Hove to back Mr. Kyle, the sitting MP?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that selections are a matter for local party members and affiliates, and it's their right to decide what they'd like to decide. It's not, but Momentum is not campaigning to reselect any particular MPs.
So why was Mr. Sandal addressing a group of Momentum supporters, telling them how to go about deselecting anti-Corbyn Labour MPs?
He was invited by one local group. Look, in a big organisation which is very, very active, 150 groups, 18,000 members, tens of thousands of activists. People have democratic debate. People get invited to talks. That's really normal. That one meeting does not dictate what national policy is.
But are you telling us today that Momentum at the local level is not and will not be involved in any efforts to replace sitting MPs?
What I'm telling you is that selections are a matter for local Labour Party members and affiliates. It is their right to choose through the mechanisms laid down by the party conference and by the National Executive Committee to do that. That's completely normal. What I'm saying is Momentum is not campaigning for any deselections.
What, even at a local level?
Momentum is not campaigning for deselections. Labour Party members,
even at a
Labour
local
Party
level, are you
members
telling
and
me
affiliates.
Momentum is not involved in trying to get rid of local MPs at the local level?
Andrew,
Is that what you're saying?
No, Andrew, what I'm telling you is that selections and elections within the Labour Party are the right, the democratic right, for members and affiliates to take part in. We are not trying to interfere with that one way or the other. Now, there may be members of Momentum who are members of the Labour Party who take a particular view on their MP. For example, myself, I'm a member of Momentum, I'm a member of the Labour Party. I take a particular view on my MP. I really like my MP.
Who is your MP?
Keir Starmer.
So his position is safe from Momentum?
all MPs' positions are safe from, as I keep on saying.
Well, except that we've got, hold on, Mr. Schneider, we've got Len McCluskey of Unite saying it is time to get rid of MPs who've been overcritical of Mr. Corbyn. We've had Mark Sandel lecturing Momentum on how to unseat sitting MPs, and we've had Clive Lewis describing a deselection as simply democratic selection. Have you not had the memo yet?
Andrew, selections, as I keep on saying, are the democratic right of local party members, of local party members and affiliates. I'm not trying to stop anybody having those rights. Those rights are extremely important in a democratic party. But what I'm not going to do is be goaded into saying something which I don't think, which is that Momentum should be organising for deselections, because that's not what we're doing.
You're not being goaded, you're simply being questioned. And let me finish with one final question. Is it correct that Momentum would like to have, or plans to have, what it's calling an engagement officer in every constituency Labour Party, just to keep an eye on what's going on? Can you tell us what this engagement officer would do?
That's half true. If you look at the guidelines on Momentum's website, we say that to be a verified local group of Momentum, you need to have positive engagement with your local Labour Party, local trade union branches, local community groups and activist groups. And so we have, each group has Labour Party engagement officers so that people are making sure they're taking part in the party. We want people to be as involved in the Labour Party as they can be, to be campaigning, to be a real part of a democratic party.
James Schneider, thanks, because I know it was at short notice. Thanks for joining us this morning. Let's move on, because we talked about Labour at the beginning of the morning, to the Lib Dems meeting in conference. Now, theoretically, the Lib Dems at this point, given what's happening to Labour, and even given Mrs May and grammar schools and all the rest of it, there could be an opening for the Lib Dems. But is there any sign of it?
Well, at the moment, the thing that Tim Farron could probably do to get noticed would be to go skinny dipping off Brighton Beach, because that might get him a bit of press attention. He actually gave quite an interesting speech, which I'm afraid I read on my mobile phone rather than watching in person, and that tells the tale itself. You know, this is a guy who's trying to rebuild locally, get councillors elected again. They're being relatively successful at doing that. They just got a 38% swing in one seat the other day against the Labour Party. But this is a very, very long road back, and at the moment they're not exploiting the sort of national opportunity they've got.
I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it?
I think the problem that they've got is that their grassroots network of activists is so depleted. So it's a sort of opposite situation to what's going on
he's got more members
in the Labour Party. Well, they don't have that kind of infrastructure anymore. There's no resources, there's no human resources or financial resources. They don't have the people to go out there and knock on doors. And Tim Farron, a great and lovely guy, but he doesn't provide the most charismatic of leadership. And they really need to find something to kind of pin a revival on, and at the moment it isn't there.
See, I'm more upbeat than either of these two, I think. Probably, I agree it's a long road back, but I think there is a space down the middle for them, where Labour is and where the Conservatives are, you know, particularly with May, you know, always was very authoritarian at the Home Office. That opens a space up for a Liberal Party. Yeah, they have got a problem. They've only got 8 MPs. If they had more MPs, I think we'd all be paying a lot more attention to them.
Well, attention is one of their problems, isn't it? Demanding, getting attention is difficult for them. And I think there won't be that many senior journalists at the Lib Dem conference, I was
There never used to be. I mean, this is, you know, we're going way back to where Lib Dems used to be a long time ago, but it's worse. You know, even if you look 10 years ago, at least they had a reasonable cohort. But I don't think that actually the number of MPs is the issue here. To get attention, you've got to be spiky, punchy, really pumping out controversial press releases. They're not doing any of that stuff.
They've got one advantage over Labour, which I think is they are used to talking to people who disagree with them, right? There are relatively few friendly ears if you're a Lib Dem, and so that they are constantly have had to make the case, you know, and on the local level, I think there are signs of resurgence. But as Tim says, it is a long road back, but there is a space in British politics for them.
There's this new Tory group campaigning for a hard Brexit. It's fair to say, you know, that the longer Mrs May waits to trigger Article 50, the more Tory divisions on this are going to come to the surface.
Well, I think that's fair enough, absolutely. But I do have some sympathy with her position of leaving it until she's got her ducks in a row. I mean, you know, once Article 50 is triggered, there is a limited time frame in order to work out all the negotiations. And you had a very interesting guest on earlier. We had David Liddington, who spent so long on the European diplomatic circuit, and you know his view is that you do need time to work all this out before you actually press the button on it.
So not this side of New Year.
But you can't leave it forever, because think about the fact that there are European elections coming up. It would be ludicrous if we were in a position where we are re-electing European MPs.
Right, but
MEPs.
not before Christmas, maybe not for a while.
Well, I'm going to out myself as a moaning Romaniac. This is what the phrase that Diane James used.
Last point.
But I do think there is a huge problem, which is that Nigel Farage said this morning, people didn't vote to step. People voted to get out of the single market. Really, did they? I mean, no one knows what Brexit means.
We'll talk more about that as the autumn progresses. That's all for today.
I've been